Family-owned amusement parks really are the heart and soul of America's amusement industry. Nowadays, large corporations dominate in this country, but every now and then you will come across an awesome independently owned park. Oftentimes, these locations will have that one true standout roller coaster that draws people in, and sometimes they've found so much success that they've grown to the size of a big corporate park. Just look at Hershey Park, the largest independent amusement park in the United States. Sure, much of its popularity can be credited to its branding as Hershey's Amusement Park, but it still retains that charming classic American park atmosphere and focuses a lot on guest experience by listening to critiques and making the park better than it previously was. So I want to take those two things, family-owned parks and independently owned and operated locations, and count down my 15 favorite roller coasters between them all in America. Just to give you an idea of some of the companies that will be disqualified, Six Flags, Cedar Fair, SeaWorld, Hershend, and Palace Entertainment's coasters will not be on here, but I will leave in small chains like Fun Spot with their 3 parks in Florida and Georgia. I'd also have included IB Parks and Entertainment, which is owned by the Staples family, but I've yet to visit any of their 3 parks, including the namesake of the company, Indiana Beach. That's a big disclaimer I wanted to throw out there because I'm sure some of their roller coasters could at least be argued deserve a top 15 spot on this list. But alright, let's go ahead and get started with number 15, and for this we're going to head to one of my favorite family-owned properties, and that's Silverwood for Tremors. This is a powerhouse of a wooden roller coaster, and I think it's got an exceptionally creative layout the way it dives through tunnels. But it's also got a great variety of forces, from airtime to laterals, and all of the laterals you experience on this ride are moments that have received steel track from Rocky Mountain Construction. So you get this fascinating blend of smooth track and bumpier wood track, but I feel like this ride can get away with it. As I mentioned, the steel sections are lateral focused, and the wood sections are airtime focused, making it feel more cohesive than other renovated wood coasters. But nevertheless, I think it's a good time and one heck of a night ride. Remaining in the same park at number 14 is Aftershock at Silverwood. These two have gotten more neck and neck as I've thought about my experiences on each, and that's entirely by coincidence because they have almost nothing in common. This is a big steel coaster, the largest in the park, and it's all about intensity. Aftershock pulls some wild forces that really crush you down in your seat, but it's great and enjoyable because it's smooth, but not too smooth. And it surprises me that Vekoma was able to build a ride this fantastic back in 2008, but these giant inverted boomerangs really are something else. Number 13, Cannibal at Lagoon. Making our way south, another fantastic family-owned park is Lagoon, with their headlining coaster being built by the park themselves. It's one of the most impressive in-house projects we've ever seen in the amusement industry, and that's for a variety of reasons. 1, Cannibal's got the tallest drop in the world that goes beyond vertical, 116 degrees to be exact. The 208-foot lift hill comes in the form of an elevator and takes place inside this menacing-looking structure. So visually this thing looks fantastic, but it also rides great. I recall it being a pretty smooth coaster with great forces and definitely some spectacular inversions sprinkled throughout the layout. Number 12, Ravine Flyer 2 at Waldameer. Talk about a one-hit wonder. Waldameer is a super small park up in the upper left-hand corner of Pennsylvania, and they've got one heck of a wooden coaster on their hands. Ravine Flyer 2, just like Tremors, features a very unique layout the way it passes over a road and follows the terrain, equating to really good pacing. Until the last few airtime hills, it really doesn't feel like you slowed down at all on this coaster. And I love its location too, right along Lake Erie. It's one of the best views you're going to get out there on a coaster. Number 11, Raven at Holiday World. Perhaps the best park in the world for wooden roller coasters. It's hard to believe, but Raven is actually the weakest of the bunch. It is still an amazing ride though, especially once you get to the second half and it flies through the woods. The pacing is simply unbeatable and the trees accentuate your sense of speed. I enjoy the first half too, don't get me wrong, but this is one of those coasters that gets better the further you progress through its layout. Number 10, Stunt Pilot at Silverwood. This compact Raptor coaster by Rocky Mountain Construction was meant for a smaller park like Silverwood, but what's ironic is this is the only property they've sold one to that's like that, so they really haven't found the success in this model that I think they were expecting. But that doesn't matter. I love these rides, and I think Stunt Pilot for a while was seen as the less impressive modified version of this layout because it needed to be reprofiled to facilitate a longer train. However, if you ask me, it turned out just as good with incredible pacing and forces, plus it's smoother than the others, meaning I could ride this thing over and over again. Great ride, best you're going to come across in the Pacific Northwest. Number 9, Phoenix at Knoebels. Quite possibly my favorite family-owned park is Knoebels, home to a handful of great roller coasters, but the only one capable of making this list was Phoenix, and it's one impressive ride. It's deceptive though. I don't think many would expect it to be so good just by looking at it. The key here is the restraints, or lack thereof, that allow riders to experience ample airtime moments that launch you into the stratosphere. It is one of the scariest rides I think I've ever been on, which is just so ironic considering how small of a stature it's got. Don't judge this book by its cover. Phoenix is a crazy roller coaster. Number 8, Gale Force at Playland's Castaway Cove. This entry I'm sure took a lot of you guys by surprise, as it's really not talked about much at all. But since I first rode Gale Force, I've always said it was one of the most underrated coasters I've ridden, and here it is clocking in at number 8. Now the thing about this ride that's so great is the transitions and track profiling are all very wonky, but the coaster itself is smooth, so you experience some wild forces as a result, especially airtime. Another benefit with this ride is I absolutely love that it launches you through the layout twice, which fixes the only problem I would have had with it, and that's length. So overall, just a shockingly great coaster. Number 7, Hades 360 at Mount Olympus theme park. One could make the argument for this being the most intense wooden coaster on the planet, and that's because its layout is completely insane. I mean, judging by the layout on its own, the way it passes through the longest tunnel in any coaster out there warrants a spot higher than 7. However, Mount Olympus is an example of an independent park that really doesn't have the best maintenance because Hades 360 is ungodly rough. It made rewriting this coaster feel like a chore, which is a shame because the coaster in many ways is absolutely incredible. But if they smoothened it out, I think it would become one of the best wooden coasters in the world if it isn't already. Number 6, Boardwalk Bullet at Kima Boardwalk. According to its manufacturer, Boardwalk Bullet is the most compact wooden roller coaster in the world, and it gives this tiny little boardwalk park an unbelievable standout attraction. You'd think these build constraints would be a setback, but no, this coaster's pacing is incredible. There's so much airtime all over the place, and the ride seems like it'll never end because of all these sections that are tucked away beneath previous sections of track. It's a seriously impressive ride, and I know it has trouble staying open, but if you get the chance to experience it, you absolutely should. Number 5, Legend at Holiday World. I'm a big wooden coaster guy, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I don't think Legend gets anywhere near enough credit for how stupidly amazing it is. I'd argue it's the number 1 coaster on Earth for laterals. It's got fantastic airtime, and to top it off, more than 4,000 feet of track. It's the full package for a wood coaster, yet it's still not my favorite in this park, which is crazy to think about, but we'll get to that one later. Number 4 is Wildcat's Revenge at Hershey Park. Now technically this is owned by the Hershey Company, so really doesn't qualify for this list. I decided to include it because that is how it started out, and it remains fully independent, meaning they can focus their attention specifically at this park and add some big expensive additions like Wildcat's Revenge. And this ride is totally amazing. It blew my expectations out of the water when I rode it last summer. The pacing is crazy, the way it flows from one element to another and maintains its speed, and the sequencing was also much stronger than I expected. Still, I rank one other coaster at this park higher, and that's my third favorite on this list, Sky Rush at Hershey Park. One of the most divisive roller coasters in the world. I know this ride may not be for everyone, whether it's because of its intensity or its restraints, but I've always been one of its biggest fans, and I think that's personally because I love its intensity. One man's gold is another man's treasure, am I right? Luckily for those that this coaster may not cater to, you do have a restraint change coming soon that should make the ride more comfortable and approachable in the future. But force-wise, everything from the airtime to the positives and even the laterals are mind-blowing on Sky Rush. Number 2 is Air Force 1 at Fun Spot Atlanta. Imagine a ride on the scale of Wildcat's Revenge, if not a little bit bigger, and it's at a park with a mere fraction of the budget. How Fun Spot was able to afford what is in my opinion one of the most extraordinary coasters ever built is mind-blowing to me. But however it happened, it is what it is, one of the best, and I can't think of a layout with sequencing and pacing this fantastic. Each element serves its purpose, the way some are rather sprawling and others are tighter and more compact, topped off with the ridiculous quad-down finale, which might just be the single most insane moment on any coaster I've ridden. The only downside with this thing, and this isn't really a downside, it's more just something that my top coaster excels in, is length. So at the number 1 spot by a hair is the Voyage at Holiday World. If you ask me, any day of the week, this is the best wooden coaster in the world, and I don't even think it's that close. What the Gravity Group was able to do with this layout is unlike anything we've ever seen. Big hills in the first half, seamlessly creeping up a hill until you're at ground level at the far end, and then haul ass on the outbound run of track. It is an engineering marvel the way it utilizes that terrain, and I think part of the reason it is so good is because Holiday World has one of the most dedicated maintenance teams out there. Each year, their wooden coasters receive plenty of retracking, making them feel good as new, and keeping up with the Voyage is particularly difficult because of its length. 6,400 feet long, and I know this park would never replace any of it with steel because they know wood coasters are where it's at. But hey, that's just my ranking of the 15 best roller coasters at America's family-owned amusement parks. Let me know in the comments what your list looks like and if there's any I missed. I definitely haven't been to every independent park in this country, so I'm sure there's others that may have found their way on here. But if you enjoyed this video anyway, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Coaster Dash, but also check out my new merchandise store as it's the best way to directly support what I do here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.